Irish Illustrated Insider is sponsored by Visit Southbend.com. Is it time to check a Notre Dame home game off your bucket list? Has it been too long since you've soaked in the game day atmosphere in person? Whether it's for the first time ever or in a while, start planning your trip to South Bend to watch the Fighting Irish with ideas and inspiration at visitsouthbend.com.
You're listening to Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated. Pete Sampson from The Athletic joins us. We're a couple days after Notre Dame's 24-17 victory over California, visiting California. Hadn't been in town since 1967. I was at that game in 67. Very vague memories of that. But Notre Dame needed a rally from their quarterback, certainly from their running game. Offensive line did a great job. Defense came through when it had to, except for that one drive in the third quarter. But man, what I was trying to find a worse start from a quarterback. We all thought about Eric Chappelle from 98 at USC. Three quarterbacks were bad against Georgia Tech in the opener of 2007. But
yeah, that one sticks out.
Wow, they had a lot to overcome, man.
They did. And Drew Pine had a start that reminded us of the 2007 beginning to a game. That offense in the first quarter, it's incredible when you think it was 3 plays, negative yardage punt, 3 plays punt, 3 plays, 2 yards punt, 3 plays, 5 yards punt. And then it got worse because he fumbled a snap to start the second quarter. It's remarkable, really, that he ended up 17 for 23. And I don't care the machinations of 17 for 23. If he never threw the ball farther than he could, then either one of us could throw him.
Well, that's about what he did.
It's what he did. But he still, he went from impossible. Even the whole press box was saying, like, I mean, they got to warm up Angeli, right? We were all thinking they have to warm up Angeli. And then he ended up playing well enough for Notre Dame to win the close game.
It was really, really difficult to watch. And I'm still floored that he was able to turn it around, because when he lost the fumble on the first play of the second quarter, you're like, this guy he's just lost it. There's nothing to be redeemed here today. And then he goes out and he goes 13 of 14 for 123 yards from that moment on. So it was absolutely wild.
Well, my only explanation is I believe it was after the fumbled snap where he was standing on the sideline and he's just kind of looking up to the heavens. And so that must have been what did it, because he was really bad up to that point. And Tim, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of simple passes that could be made that he wasn't making early on.
Right.
And really, you know, it took him being so bad in the passing game with a Lorenzo Styles drop mixed in there, you know, that would have been a first down, that it forced Tommy Reese and Marcus Freeman, I think in particular, to just say, all right, we're going to see if we can run it. And lo and behold, they were able to run it, and they got pushed from that offensive line like we haven't seen. Somebody asked me today, where did I have the Cal defensive line rated in the first rate? I had them 6th on the schedule. It's a pretty good Cal defensive front. Although, Tim, remember we talked about you look at Cal's defensive line and they line up in a 2-4-5, and they were 3 and 4 down the whole game. I don't think they did that the whole much, but you think, man, you know, Notre Dame should be able to run against this team. Well, they were able to.
Yeah, and I was really surprised because we spent the second half of Marshall lamenting, how are they not getting a push? Not that there were just little things wrong, but they weren't even getting a push, right? Like we'll go back and
Patterson was a little against Marshall and Alt a little bit, but
it was just so meaningless to get a Tyree or to get Estime, not Tyree, he didn't get the ball until yesterday. Estime going and Diggs going. Pete said, let's give it 3 games. Maybe we give it 1 more too, because Jarrett Patterson's his 3rd game with the group now, and they're going to need that push again, because I don't like to say ball control and keep the ball away from North Carolina, but you certainly don't want to put your defense out there for 14 possessions against North Carolina, because their 14 offensively is better than your 14 offensively. Now, Notre Dame's defense is much better than Carolina's defense. I get that, but you know, what's the point total you got to hold them back to? So you need Notre Dame to have that push again from the offensive line and those 2 running backs.
And then where can Reese and Pine go in the pass game? Because like Freeman referenced this on Monday, it's like you can't play that way every week and not just lose it. like to watch that for the next 9 games, I think would be just intolerable for Marcus Freeman and Tommy Reese.
Definitely be intolerable.
I put this in my final thoughts today, but I wanted to chart the average distance of completion for Drew Pine in the game. Like, how far beyond the line of scrimmage was the ball on average when it was caught on his 17 completions?
You know, I know his average depth of target was 2.8, and it's the lowest I can recall. But I don't know. That's not what you're saying, right?
No, so it's like you take out the incompletions, just the 17 completions.
Okay.
The average depth of completion was 0.65 yards.
Oh my God. Wait, what? How's that? I don't know what you mean by depth of completion.
So when the Audric Estime 31-yarder was a 4-yard pass.
Oh, you mean how much further forward?
Yeah. So if you throw a screen pass 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage, that's a -7.
Okay, I got you.
So like where is the ball being caught relative to the line of scrimmage when Drew Pine is completing a pass and it's less than 1 yard?
Well, I know that of his 17 completions, 10 of them gained 6 yards or less. And so it was my question, Pete, to Marcus Freeman today about the vertical game and where you go from here. And I thought Tommy Reese did a really nice job of being creative in that respect, because their 2 longest completions were the 36-yarder to Estime and the 21-yarder to Tyree. So you have to do some things with the running backs, and they did a lot of damage with them on the field together, not only in the passing game, but running as well. And there are a lot of things that they can do out of that. You motion Tyree, and so you get the attention of the linebackers, and then Estime can run an angle route. And because you've run Tyree up the other hash, you've pulled the linebacking core away from Estime. And so when Estime runs a quick little angle route, he's free. He has room to run before falling. Remember how mad I got at that, Tim?
Yes,
when Estime,
you slammed the counter as if that was like
because
November and Notre Dame was blowing the game to Boston College.
Right. But you're thinking he's got to score on this, and he falls down.
Yeah, that was weird. It was not. It was he's a more graceful athlete than that. That was not.
Yes, I don't know why it happened, but
I don't know why it happened.
He played well. Tyree played well. The offensive line was outstanding. The defensive line. That was an advantage. That was a huge advantage on paper. We thought it was the week before against Marshall, and it wasn't.
Got one.
You're right. Exactly.
Right. There we go.
But that was one where Notre Dame's defensive line should have dominated that offensive line, and they pretty much did. If they had called all the holding penalties, Notre Dame would have. I guess I said that wrong in my tail of the tape, but if you force California not to hold, Notre Dame would have had 10 sacks.
It's interesting that this is the time now where you can see a little bit of the strengths we thought. Defensive line, I think we've had this conversation off air a lot. Secondary gets its test this week, right? I mean, it passed the biggest test it could ever have against Ohio State, and it's going to have another one this week because it's a different look, tough situation, and they don't have 8 months to game plan for it, so it's a little bit different. But the secondary clearly has outperformed what we thought they would, right? No matter what the completion percentage is against, no matter the lack of turnovers created, Ohio State had 21 points, right? And I think other teams can't pass them as well. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Tim. We were having a conversation before we went on the air, and Pete, you were saying that you're not sure how well the DBs have played, and I get that. And Tim, you're right. The test. It's really a test this week. But I think a lot of times that throws aren't made. A lot of throws aren't made because the coverage is good. So you're not going to say, they made a play on the ball.
Right.
Because the ball didn't come that way. But I think that's what's happening a lot in the secondary, that throws aren't being made because the coverage is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's like the secondary is playing well. I'm just not sure if they're playing like amazingly well, pretty well, or what, because it's like the lack of like havoc plays,
right?
No interceptions, I think they have 5 pass breakups all year, and the last one was Brandon Joseph on the Hail Mary, which was like not actually a good play. So I think that group has definitely overachieved. That's a positive, and I agree with O'Malley. They'll get like a huge test this weekend. But yeah, it's like the pass rush and the secondary; those two things fit together, and I think Plummer definitely felt pass rush even when it wasn't there on Saturday, which contributed to his inaccuracy. I mean, going into the game, I think Notre Dame was second to last in the nation in completion percentage against, and now they're 72nd.
Yeah,
like they shaved about like 13 percentage points off that by how well they played against Cal.
Yeah, and I was trying to get to that roundabout. I was not doing a good job. The defensive line, I now believe, will be what we thought it will be, what it was going to be. The secondary, I think, can be better than we forecasted coming into the season, even though we're not certainly sure and we're not there yet. And then the offensive line showed promise. And those are three really important things other than quarterback.
Yeah. And I agree with you about the D line. And I think that the D line will continue to play well. I mean, that was the biggest surprise of the first two games. And in so doing, that certainly will continue to help the secondary. I thought the interior defensive line, I mean, Cross, Lacey, and Jason Amalola were just absolutely controlling the middle of the line of scrimmage. And again, that was a weakness for Cal, and that's what should have happened. But that was a weakness for Marshall, and that's not what did happen that game. So, lot of really good things. Now, I don't know about the linebacker play, man. I said in tail of tape today, I think they're making plays that they're capable or that they should make. But beyond that, they're not making a whole lot of plays. And it's worse this time because the D-line controlled the line of scrimmage.
I think we all probably expected Leofau to be more on it than he's been. I didn't expect him to miss tackles. Bertrand hasn't really snapped back into the guy that we saw last August. I'm talking about a year ago when he was so impressive before he had the wrist injury. I think Kaiser has been good. And then Bauer, I didn't talk to him last week, but I mean, clearly he's like playing through some discomfort, right?
True.
True. He has a shoulder problem for sure.
But I'm with you, Tim. I think that I think Kaiser is playing well, but I feel like the other three have not quite got there yet.
So I assume Kaiser will take over a larger role in nickel for Bertrand this first half of North Carolina, and then maybe because of that for the game. Doesn't that seem like a more natural fit anyway? Jack Kaiser being in that role?
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. Now,
Absolutely.
I had we were walking out today, and someone made a good point. I brought this up. I was like, why doesn't Kaiser just play more in the nickel anyway? You can run out of the nickel. Maybe they feel compromised with Tariq Bracy and Kaiser not having Bertrand running up. And I mean, Bertrand takes on a guard better than Kaiser. He's not a better tackler than Kaiser, but he takes on a guard better than Kaiser, and run fits are part of it. It's not all just who you can track down when you're Jack Kaiser. So I'm sure that's part of it, but you know what? He's about to get his chance, I think, to do it. And last time he got his chance to play anything like that, he was a game ball recipient when we came out of nowhere. So I do think Jack Kaiser playing nickel linebacker for Bertrand could be an accidental upgrade this coming week.
That's interesting. You know, I realize that, I mean, a couple years ago, you get spoiled with Owusu Koromoa, the way he's making plays all over the field. They don't have a linebacker like that. And I guess you kind of expect Leofau to be that guy. And Marcus Freeman keeps talking about coming back from an injury. What are we talking about? Shin splints? Is that what he was?
It's got to be. That can coming back from the injury.
That can plague an athlete over a period of time. Cause if you don't rest it, it's difficult to overcome that.
I mean, Leofau said he was 100% well before camp when we asked him specifically about the injury that he suffered last year.
Yeah.
We didn't ask him about shin splints or anything else. We said, when did you heal from? He said, I kind of get
the feeling that Leofau is at his best when he's rushing the quarterback.
I do too. I agree with you.
So, you know, do you continue to put him in more positions to do that, whether it's up the middle or coming off the edge? I don't know, but that seems to come really, really naturally to him.
I think we knew that coming into the year. We just thought he'd be better at other things along with
that's
being at his best rushing a quarterback.
No, that's a good point. Guys, what else you want to talk about here in segment one? Any other topic before we head to our
I
questions?
found it interesting. I asked Marcus Freeman today, is Diggs going to be available for this game? Would you have used 3 when you got a hot hand? Because I think that was the real story. Not that if Diggs was available or not available, but would you have gone to a third running back when you had those 2 guys? That tag team certainly handled the workload properly, and I think they benefited from it. I
agree.
It's fair to say that because they are successful. If they weren't successful, you'd have said you needed Logan Diggs. So I'd be interesting to see how they use a third runner. I guess going forward is tough. It's a one-off. There's a bye week coming up. So how they'll use a third runner. And and I asked about Merriweather, if they can integrate another wide receiver, not as much this week because he looks like he made a mistake, but if you can use another wide receiver as you go forward past the bye week. Because at some point, bye week 5, going into week 6 of a football season, you should be able to integrate someone, right?
I think that's reasonable for Merriweather. With Diggs, like I understand his utility in 2-back sets, but if Notre Dame is just running 11 personnel or 12 personnel, like I think he is by far the third back. Like I think there's a pretty big gap between Estime and Diggs. And after last weekend, I feel like the coaching staff probably has even more trust in Tyree and Estime than they did before it started, and they had a lot before it started. So I think you're rolling with the guys you trust, and Reese himself said it last week. It's really hard to play 3 backs in a game.
Yeah, he did say that last week. Look, if Diggs isn't going to run between the tackles on an inside zone blocking scheme, then then you're giving the football to the wrong guy. If he's going to kick that outside when it's not blocked that way, then you're giving the ball to the wrong guy. But I would imagine the next opportunity Logan Diggs gets, he's going to, probably do a much better job of taking advantage of the opportunity. This segment of Irish Illustrated Insider was brought to you by Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Located on Fremont Street in historic downtown Las Vegas, Circa is the home of the world's largest sports book where you can watch up to 19 games at once. Want to be outside? No problem. There's no better place to take in all the college and NFL action than Stadium Swim. 6 pools on 3 levels and a 40-foot tall high-def screen to watch all the action. Irish fans, when you come to town for the Notre Dame BYU game, Circa is the place for you. For reservations and more information, go to circalasvegas.com. Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards, coming up.
Burning Up the Boards is brought to you by Game Day Your Way. Notre Dame football fans, make your trip to South Bend easy this fall with the help of Game Day Your Way. Services include tailgates, transportation, tickets, and more, making Game Day your one-stop shop for Notre Dame football weekend. Learn more at GameDayYourWay.com and use promo code IrishPod22 to save 10% on your tailgate package. Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. Our first question comes from Mark May Hater. Mark May Hater. It's tricky. Can you please let me know the name of the Cal player that was offsides during Notre Dame's failed field goal attempt? I am an Irish fan, disclaimer, but that was a huge play call that potentially changes the outcome of the game.
There was not a Cal player offside. And Pete, I think you point out the number that was used by the official was not only not on the field, but not on the roster. Is that correct?
So when I listened to the replay, I thought the official said 15, but the official scorer heard 50, which I feel like is a common mistake. So in the box score, it's listed as number 50, who is definitely not on the field. There is a 50 on the roster, but I think the official said 15, who was absolutely not offsides. Like I must have watched that 20 times to figure out who they were talking about. I thought maybe one of the interior guys would lean in, but
yeah, that's what I was trying to look at on that still shot. If like one of those helmets was forward more, but I couldn't see one.
But
it's definitely not 15 because he is the end of the Cal line to the far left toward the Cal sideline. He's the last guy, and he's like I think a yard or 2 back from the line.
I mean, clearly that was a huge break. And I also thought, I don't know what you guys thought about the offensive interference penalty that was called against Cal I think at the beginning of the 4th quarter.
I was confused by that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
I immediately thought of the Salerno play. So I was confused because I saw 2 in 3 games instead of 2 in a decade.
Yeah, that was not offensive interference. So, I mean, these are bad breaks for Cal, but I also think that Notre Dame's D-line was held 4 to 6 times more than were called. I don't even know how many they called. They called one on Osafa Mensah drew one, but it was pretty blatant. The one time that Mills was held, That was another time that I screamed out during the game, Tim. And I look across the way, and Marcus Freeman's just calmly giving the holding sign. I think everybody saw that.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't really, just as a personal preference, I try not to look at holding calls that weren't called, because it's just
understandable.
It's never ending.
No.
But the 2 Cal long receptions, the 15-yarder to Sturdivant and the 33-yarder to number 3, the ball is moving around as the player's going to the ground, and Cal sort of duped the officials by running hurry up and getting the next play off before it could be reviewed. So that I don't understand.
I mean, just by the nature.
I haven't seen a team run hurry up to beat the official review on an important call like that in a very long time.
It's just a giveaway.
Yeah.
It's like when the DB is holds his hands up in the air, I didn't interfere. Okay, well, you interfered with them.
I can't tell you which game, but I have seen it recently. I've seen it this year. So I think it's a trend that is starting, but just by the nature of the catch that Jeremiah Hunter had to make as a replay official.
Yeah.
I think refs now have to start taking in consideration, the offense is now playing hurry up. Maybe they know it's incomplete, or they're suspecting that it could be incomplete. But yeah, that's kind of on the official in the booth, right?
Right.
To stop it.
Yes, that's got to be signaled down.
Which people,
it's Lindsey's catch at Ohio State, the 30-yarder, was a similar catch that way, where it's he's falling forward and the ball's moving around a little bit, and the fact that doesn't get a second look. Not that I'm advocating for more reviews and longer college football games, but
yeah,
that both those moments seemed odd to me.
Yeah.
But nothing was worse than the field goal one, because that's you're just making up something up. You're not interpreting anything. You're just seeing something that's not there.
No, and you kind of at one point, as Wilcox is arguing it, I can't tell you exactly what I saw from the official, but it just seemed to me like the official, he didn't have he had no explanation.
Yeah, Wilcox did not want to answer anything about it post game, really, but I'd like to watch see the transcript or watch his press conference today, because it's going to be interesting, I'm sure.
Did he? So he declined to talk about it at halftime. Did he? He did the same thing after the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, it was not an accurate call, but I'm not going to get into it. It wasn't like he was, but I bet you he gets into it.
Yeah.
He's had an entire day and a half to look at something.
Yeah. Question from Dashing Domer. Will Tommy Reese win back some hearts with his expletive-laden pick-me-up to Drew Pine? I don't know that I'd call that a pick-me-up. I guess it was a pick-me-up, ultimately.
The best part of that whole thing was that Drew Pine saw that already on his phone within 15 minutes of the game ending, because that's amazing. He just already saw that.
I know. He says after the game, we all cracked up.
Yeah, I saw
the replay.
Yeah.
That was amazing to me. NBC Jack Collinsworth was like, man, I wonder what's happening on the other side of that conversation. And lo and behold, boom, here's what's happening. And then Collinsworth just laughed, and they quickly cut away from it. That was something.
I want to ask Tommy Reese that, I'm sure they put a camera up there, and
yeah,
Notre Dame signs off on that, right? I mean,
I think he knows well it's up there, and he just didn't care, because he spoke for all of us at that moment. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Are you kidding?
As a coach,
there's no other way of going about that.
As a coach, you reach a point where diplomacy is right the hell out the door. And that was it. Now that, at the time I thought, or not having actually rewatched the game, I thought, oh, well, that came after the fumbled snap. But that was the 5th series. No, this came after the 3rd series. So Reese, I mean, I would have lacked the same patience in his spot as well. And, fortunately, Drew Pine's a guy that can take that. I don't know how Tyler Buckner necessarily reacts. But Tyler Buckner did not start out like that.
No, that's true. Tyler Buckner,
Ohio State.
Tyler Buckner's first play of the Ohio State game being 54 yards. I don't think Tommy Reese would have said that to him.
No, exactly not. So, whether he won some hearts back.
Well, I think think about it. Tommy Reese could take it. He took it.
Yeah.
Tommy Reese took that. Dane Chris did not. Tommy Reese took that from Brian Kelly. He yelled right.
Not every quarterback could take that coaching. Not every quarterback could take that.
No, absolutely not. And Drew Pine can. And so, and I'm sure,
Which
in
is
the
convenient,
deep in the
you're gonna
deep
have to.
recesses of Tommy Reese's mind, although he was reacting instinctually, I'm sure that deep in there he realized I can chew this guy's butt, and and he's going to handle it okay. But I was thinking that during the game, I was thinking, because I didn't know when we saw the replay. I thought it came after the 5th series.
I thought it came after he airmailed Mayer on third down.
Yeah, it was that series.
It was
that was the 3rd series. Yeah.
Which, to be honest, to me was like less forgivable than the fumble. Like, you have an All-American tight end who's wide open, who's 6'5", and you missed him by like 5 feet.
Yeah, because you got to hit him twice on that every single game to score points. If you're Notre Dame right now,
I don't know that wins any hearts back. Maybe for 7 days, but as we know,
yes,
perception changes every 7 days. So I don't know that he won too many fans back. I did see on our message board that there was a thread in which people were agreeing that Tommy Reese called a really good game. We have a question on that, which I don't want to say anything further on that. We have a question on that, and I'll bring that up.
Next, from Any Davis 2 and Irish Fan 102, we have a couple questions that are related here. What factors contributed to the offensive line finally having a push? And Irish Fan 102, what technical changes in the trenches improved the performance? Was it better execution, better pre-play communication, or experience settling in?
I think, as we frequently say, it's a combination of a lot of those questions.
Communication's got to be in there, Tim, in that there were not as many free running after the first quarter as there were in the first 8 quarters.
No, that's true, except for the first series when.
That's what I mean. The first quarter had it. We talked about it. We're like, oh my gosh, there's another one. There's another linebacker just coming in. And then after that, that was not as much of a deal.
No, I know what you're saying. The first series in particular was when Zeke Corral showed little instinct to a blitzing linebacker. I mean, he had to feel the breeze of Jackson Sermon running by him, but he never twitched. He never twitched a reaction to that linebacker blitz. And Sermon's a really good football player. Yeah. But they schemed him. Tommy Reese schemed him out of plays on several occasions with the running backs. And but I mean, yeah, it's better. Again, people don't like to hear about execution, but how can you not? They were blowing them off the football. And I am just, Zeke Corral's performance against Ricky Correa doesn't seem to make any sense based upon what we saw heading into this game.
Why don't people like to hear about execution, do you think?
Because they think it's a cop-out. But it's 11 on 11. It's not a cop-out, man. It's not a cop-out. It is the essence of great teams. Alabama has great players, but they execute the hell out of their plays.
And obviously can go to coaching and you get them to execute, but maybe it's just easier to blame a coach than a player in college. Is that the thing? You can get rid of one coach faster than you can add 85 players that aren't executing.
No, but I mean, execution doesn't sound like a solution to a lot of people, because it's just like, so wait, because it could be interpreted as you're just going to keep trying to do the same things better, and people don't want the same things better. They want something new. They want a new player out there.
Yeah, and that's not how it works. It's continuing to do the same things until you do it well and consistently.
And we talked about this Thursday's podcast about like, how long would you stick with the line before you came to a decision? And I think we were sort of in agreement. You'd like to give the current iteration of the line multiple games before coming to a conclusion on it. That was game number 2 for that line, and it got a lot better. And I think there were some people on the message board who were like, why wait? I was like, well, this is the reason why you would wait, because like these players can sort of grow into their roles a little bit. That's not to say that you should always do that. But in this instance, that was the right move.
From Need a Turnover, were you surprised by how little read option we saw in the Cal game? Do you expect to see more this week?
Good luck.
I wasn't totally surprised by that. No, I want less. I mean, that's a. I'd be surprised if Buckner ran that few. I'm not surprised at all that Drew Pine ran that few.
You can't run read option with Drew Pine.
I think you pull it out at the right time.
That's a losing proposition with him. Yeah. If you don't leave the option of the quarterback keeping it, which you don't have with Drew Pine. I mean, I'm not I wasn't surprised at all. And I don't want to see it because he's not a threat when he pulls it and runs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have that option when you've run the ball and not had Drew Pine run for about 2.5 games. You can pull it out when you really need one. I mean, he's viable. Like when Tommy Reese said he's more nimble than he's given credit for, that's what he meant. He meant he can get away, and he'll get away and get 11 yards every game, right, on a scramble.
Yeah, but
Well,
there was a time where he kept it because it was like kind of a funky snap where he didn't handle it properly. He's dead when that happens.
Right.
Yes.
There has to be some sort of sleight of hand. Like I was actually surprised how many sort of zone read concepts they stuck with, just giving the ball obviously at a much higher percentage. And it was pretty effective because of how the line played.
It's tough not to run read option in today's game.
It
That
is.
has to be your
I mean,
base.
everybody, because it just makes so much sense. If the quarterback makes a good decision, generally speaking, look, if both blocks are blown, then it doesn't matter. But if one block is made and the quarterback makes the right read, it's hard not to run. It's hard not to have read option as an integral part of your offense. But I do not see Drew Pine running that effectively. Could I jump back? I want to make a point from the previous question. Actually, I'm jumping back. When we were talking about the offensive line, it's always like, put so-and-so in, he can't be any worse than. That's just not a true statement. Yes, they can be worse. It's like, put this new offensive lineman in, he can't be any worse than. If he was better in practice, then he would be playing already. If he's not playing, if the starter is screwing up in games, but he's playing better than his backup on the practice field, you can't start the guy that isn't proving it when you're running your plays on the practice field.
He wasn't taken out of the game last year, but Michael Carmody was the reserve who did not play great in his first start. He was injured, and Tosh Baker came in. If you had never seen Tosh Baker play and you like Tosh Baker in recruiting, you'd say, well, just play Tosh Baker. He can't be doing worse than Carmody, who had a bad half.
And I understand that. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that reaction to it. But the reality is, it's like, put Angeli in, he can't be any worse. Well, in the first 5 series, that was probably true. But generally speaking, that's not true. Steve Angeli's never played a game. I'm sure they picked instances. If it's a 60-40 breakdown in practice, I'm sure they picked instances in practice where Angeli was put in that situation. Now, nothing was going to happen on the practice field last week.
Yeah, that was not
to bump Pine out of the starting spot. I get that, but it can be, believe it or not, as bad as it can look, it can be worse if you don't know what's going on. For example, and I may be walking over another question.
Jump to this. Jump to Dutter 25.
Well, I was actually referring to a different one, but we'll get back to that. All right. Now let's go back to Irish Guy 8282, which you asked me. If Tommy Reese calls the game like he did in the second half of the Cal game, would Notre Dame have beaten Marshall?
So the third quarter and the first half of the fourth. I mean, well, you'd be mixing in Tyler Buckner running. I mean, Tyler Buckner was the only guy that got first downs in that game.
Right. Yeah, that's a hard comparison.
It's a hard thing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good. You know what? If we take this question properly, if you would mix in Tyler Buckner running and using Estime, Tyree, and short pass to Lorenzo Styles that gets you your biggest gain in 18 yards before the Estime play, yeah, I think that's a way they could have beaten Marshall. But Buckner would have been running the ball. Why would you have to have him run the ball? He'd still be your best running back.
Is the offensive line going to play as well as
yeah, that's just exactly. I mean, they got no push against Marshall. I don't.
Yeah, the offensive line would have to play like they did against Cal, which they did not do against
exactly.
Marshall.
And this is why I object to play calling, because Tommy Reese called a great game. Well, and I agree with that. But it sure as hell helps when it's 2nd and 4 and you just ran the ball. I mean, and that's why.
How good of a game did he call in the first 5 series when Drew Pine was afraid to have the ball in his hands?
And that's why it always comes back to execution. And it's why 41 years into this business, I still hesitate to question play calling, because there are so many other factors involved with it. And if your the offensive line got no push against Marshall. So that game plan would not have worked because Estime and Tyree wouldn't have combined for 35 carries and 140 yards rushing.
I have a question for you for play calling. End of the half this past game. What was the point of that? Is it that Drew Pine cannot trusted to throw it there properly? Like he has to, obviously Drew Pine has to wind up to get it 50 yards, but Drew Pine can throw it 50 yards. We know Drew Pine can throw the ball 50 yards. It's harder in a game because you have to have total ability to step up. Were they that worried that something could go wrong when Drew Pine is stepping up to throw it? Because otherwise there's no reason not to take a Hail Mary.
I don't think that was it. I think it was Marcus Freeman wanted to get in the locker room and he wasn't thinking about that.
A punt's more dangerous than Hail Mary.
I'm just, we're talking about
one guy blows a blocking assignment on a punt.
We're talking about a very inexperienced coach. And he had in his mind that our offense has gone to crap. Let's just let's punt it, pin them back there. They're going to take a knee and we're going to get out of here.
It's like in a vacuum. I didn't understand it at all. The way Pine was playing, because at that point, it wasn't Drew Pine finishing 13 of 14 for 123 yards. Drew Pine. It was Drew Pine doesn't know the cadence. Drew Pine can't catch a snap. Drew Pine can't hit a guy in the flat. Drew Pine can't, like, I get it in the sense of like Drew Pine was not somebody you're gonna be like, let's put more on Drew Pine in this instance. Also, like, who's the receiver who's going to catch it?
Claypool.
Oh, right. Good call. Yeah.
You can get it down there. Come on. No, yeah. It's just it's a weird thing. All right. It's a bigger picture thing. You don't trust Drew Pine to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the half. All right. I get it, Pete. He was playing terribly. You don't trust Drew Pine to throw one pass into the flat either when you know your defense is going to come and have to come back on the field 3 times in the fourth quarter. And I don't disagree with Marcus Freeman and Tommy Reese. I think they thought to themselves, if we just punt and John Stott does what he does best, because you know how good John Stott is. If John Stott keeps doing that, they're not going to beat us. And he was right. But it says something that they did not think Drew Pine could throw one ball in the flat when Cal is sending 9 guys into the line on first down. I mean, it was begging them to do it. And I guess they were smart enough not to be suckered into heavy.
It's like how many times have we seen Drew Pine have a ball batted at the line of scrimmage in practice?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying it's more of a going forward thing. There's a trust issue there.
All right, question for you guys. He actually connected on 14 of his last 15. What was the incompletion?
Was it the drop by Styles?
No.
Okay.
It was to Lindsey, which was almost picked.
It was almost. It could have been picked, and then Lindsey almost came up with it, but that was the lone interception or incompletion.
That was one of the 3 passes Pine attempted that traveled more than 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage.
Wow.
So Tyree was one.
Tyree was one.
And then
Tyree was one. There was one to Styles.
Well, the Mayer one was over his head. That was over 10 yards.
I don't know
4.
if it was.
Okay. Yeah, it would have been. Sure, it would have been.
Maybe Tyree's was 9. But Tyree's could have been 9 yards downfield.
Yeah. All right, we have a double question here, or I've put 2 questions together. Dutter 25, if Drew Pine starts the North Carolina game, what would it take for Marcus Freeman to insert Steve Angeli? And don't give me the playbook answer because anyone could have executed the simplified playbook against Cal. And then from Panthers 23-23, if Drew Pine has another half like the first half of the Cal game in North Carolina, will we get to see the hero of the blue gold game make his debut?
I think you would see Steve Angeli make his debut in North Carolina if Notre Dame lost to Cal and Drew Pine, instead of being 17 of 23, was 12 of 23 with a pick, and they lost the game. Then I think if he played badly in the first half, you would go to another quarterback because you have nothing left. You're 0-3 and you're playing badly, and it's a different situation now. Drew Pine should have confidence. Drew Pine should not play in the first quarter like he did against North Carolina, where he's afraid of everything.
What's more important, the way he started or the way he finished?
Or the way he finished.
Of course. Let's be real.
Right. Drew Pine will start against North Carolina, by the way, to Dutter.
Yes,
25.
He will start against North Carolina unless he comes up lame during practice this week. Pete?
I mean, I would be stunned if Drew Pine didn't pick up where he left off. I was also stunned that Drew Pine started the way that he started. Like, it just blew my mind that a college junior would play that way for a quarter and a half. But like they redid the entire offense to suit Drew Pine. It doesn't make any sense then to have Steve Angeli run Drew Pine's offense. Like that makes no sense at all.
No, I don't think he's going in. But my scenario was if Drew Pine lost that game, that's the time I think another bad half leads to Steve Angeli.
Yeah, because then you literally can't. When we talk about can't get any worse. Well, actually, you can't get any worse than 0-3. That's as bad as it gets. So.
From a record standpoint, certainly understandable.
Hey, Tim, real fast on the playbook can't be any more simple. It's not about a playbook. It's about Steve Angeli going out there and having any idea where the blitz is coming from and what to call out to help himself out to not only not get killed, which they might not care about right now, but to not fumble the football.
Right.
So there's a million things.
Right. And
could be worse.
Checks, okay. So the pace slows down and Drew Pine looks to the sideline. He is in a much better situation to receive that information communicated to him than Angeli is, just because, Angeli's never been in a game. I know it looked like Drew Pine had never been in a game.
I was just going to say, it was only... It was really, really bad. But like you said, Tim, how many snaps did he have going into that game? 89 career snaps going in. You had another...
I don't know that justifies...
No, nothing should be that bad.
Start. No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. But Drew Pine will start, and if he struggles like that out of the gate again, no, they probably won't change him because the last time he did it, he pulled it together. So
let's put it this way. He was bad enough where if he did that against Alabama, you'd be screaming, do your blanking job, because it just looked terrible. You know what I mean? It was just everything was so poorly done, and it looked like he had no shot of improving. And all of a sudden he improved. So good.
I agree. Question from Jay Marasco. Is it safe to think that Tobias Merriweather's lack of quality playing time means he is struggling with the offensive playbook, injury, work ethic, or traits needed to make a significant contribution?
I asked Marcus Freeman this today because we did see Deion Colsey get in on a kickoff return as a blocker with a knee brace on. So not sure when he's going to rejoin the fray as a wide receiver. But I asked Freeman, and he definitely indicated that it's playbook, and translating playbook from practice field to playing field, I think, is the tough thing. It's not that I bet you Tobias Merriweather does better in practices translating the play when it's set into him. And it's just a different situation when you're in your first game at Notre Dame. And Freeman mentioned the word trust, right?
Yeah, and it was suggested that Merriweather was supposed to motion on one of the plays that he was in. First of all, during the game, I didn't know he was in because
I'll read the
because you can't read the jersey numbers.
You couldn't read they are intelligible to the human eye. So Tobias Merriweather was a guy that we wanted to play even more than we did, said Freeman. All of a sudden, the game is close, the game's on the line. You're going to play people that you trust the most. What does that mean? Guess what? Our coaches have to earn more trust in Tobias. We have to be better so that we can have more trust in Tobias, and Tobias has to meet the coaches halfway.
So if he goes into a game and is supposed to motion and doesn't,
you're going to put
the entire play
or Braden Lindsay. Yep, it's just the way it goes.
Now, can you throw a jump ball to him somewhere? Yeah, probably. But is
Hail Mary, Hail Mary.
Yeah, Pete Sampson, at the end of the first half would have been a good time for that.
You imagine if Tobias Merriweather caught a Hail Mary at the end of the half from Drew Pine? We couldn't even have a podcast.
Or if he went out and ran a curl route.
No. Just run the straight line.
I still believe that although I can't compare. I was going to say it's kind of like everybody saying Chris Tyree needs more touches, and all of a sudden he has as many in the first half as he did the first two games. But Tyree's a guy that they can trust.
That was clear. That was not even
Reese used the word trust with Tyree last week. Like that was telegraphed a million. That was like that was not a situation where the coaches were like, I'm listening to this podcast. People keep saying Chris Tyree needs more touches.
No,
like they were like, yes, we want to get Chris Tyree more touches.
But it does, again, the reaction of the Cal defense to every movement that Chris Tyree made when he was on the field with Estime, Tommy Reese played Peter Sermons with his double running back and with his two running backs on the field and throwing the football to the running backs. I mean,
because you can trust Chris Tyree to do every movement correctly, whether he gets the ball or not.
Right. But look, they need Tobias Merriweather to study up and get on the field so they can take advantage of his abilities. And it's not easy. Had he come in the spring, that could have been enough of a difference for him to be ready to go. And let me just say, work ethic, that's not what it is with Tobias Merriweather. Traits, that's not what it is with Tobias Merriweather. I think we can safely say that as well.
Yes.
From Dallas Irish 83, if you had to pick one position group whose improvement would have the most significant positive impact on the rest of the season, which group would you choose and why?
A little bit more of what the offensive line did on Saturday would go a long way towards this team starting to look like and starting to play like the team we thought they were when the season started.
Yeah, offensive line, I think is, I'm trying to talk myself in another position, but I can't. And like the offensive line, like they took a big step forward, but that was not like a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. Like they still have a lot of room to grow.
Right. 3 false starts on third down from offensive linemen and 1 from Lindsey. That is not a perfect game by no means whatsoever. That's
but again, most of that came in the first.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 of the false starts came in those first 5, the 5 series from hell.
First half counts too in these games. By Notre Dame.
No, it really does. It really does. But how you finish counts more than how you started, unless how you started prevents you from winning the game.
Yeah, offensive line, a clear answer for me. Unless I could actually have a position group get significantly better from the last game, because then I would let the defensive line get significantly better from the last game, and no teams other than USC and Clemson would gain yards. So I would go with that one. But offensive line, realistically.
Yep. CUA Georgetown 83. Are people noticing that I'm choosing some different names here? All right, here we go. What is your impression of the relationship between Tommy Reese and Marcus Freeman? My intuition is that Marcus is micromanaging or intervening during the game in a way that is disruptive to Reese and may conflict with the autonomy Reese expected when he decided to stay at Notre Dame.
That's not my impression. I think Marcus Freeman is the head coach, and he better understand what Tommy Reese is looking to do on a drive. And he's also learning how to coexist with an offensive coordinator who is calling the plays without Marcus Freeman's input, really, right? Other than, hey, man, it's time to run the ball. And then Tommy Reese is able to overturn him. Freeman said post-game, I said, run it, go. He's like, no, coach, we have a check, we're throwing.
Yeah, I think that it's much more big picture with Freeman, and he referenced it in the press conference on Monday last week. He spent the majority of his time with the defense. Like he was probably even less involved than usual with the offense. So it's, it's leaning into the run game. It's, big picture stuff. I don't think Reese expected to be head coach of offense when he stayed.
Right.
Also, I don't think that Freeman is holding the offense back in any way, shape, or form, other than they wanted to play a lot of ball control at Ohio State, which made sense.
But this question makes me think of all the times it was said to us that what was the term that Brian Kelly was? What was the term used? He had shackles on. Yeah, shackles on Tommy Reese. That was not the case. It maybe the Iowa State game, maybe early the next season when he was a full-time coordinator for the first time. But all of that, most of that stuff, most of Kelly's coaching with the offense was during the week. And he had input as to what the game plan would be. But I also think that Brian Kelly, as an offensive play caller, at least in the past, recognizes that you need to step back and get out of the way and let the play caller do what he does. I'm not sure Marcus Freeman necessarily understands that yet, but he's the head coach. And he's entitled to say whatever he needs to say within reason, without disrupting what Tommy Reese needs to do as a coordinator.
Yeah, it's hard as the head coach of an 0-2 team to not give your input when your ass is on the line.
Sure.
And you think to yourself, maybe we should give the ball to Estime, as opposed to having this guy throw another pass in my face. Let me watch this guy throw another pass for the rest of his life. I mean, you really have to look at that first quarter and think, Tommy, run the ball. Boring as heck. We'll punt. Let's not give them the ball. And then he fumbles the snap. So I get it with Marcus Freeman when you're 0-2. You are, I would take a little more control. Like, I'm not going 0-3. What do they say? And remember the Titans? I've never seen the defensive coordinator's name in the paper after a loss. Marcus Freeman took control of that situation. I don't blame him. Denver Maximus.
You know what I always said to my assistant coaches?
What?
I've said this before. They don't put numbers after your name. The record.
The record, yeah.
Tim Priester, 85 and,
Yeah.
Whatever. They don't put numbers after the pitching coach's name. Go ahead, Tim.
Denver Maximus. DJ Brown played arguably his best game versus Cal. He was physical and smart. How would you grade the rest of the secondary so far, including Morrison starting over Clarence Lewis?
Pete, go ahead.
I would give them a B plus, and probably relative to what my expectations were, an A. And I honestly, maybe this is because the numbers were illegible from the press box. I didn't even know Ben Morrison started.
Yeah, he started over Clarence Lewis.
Well,
Clarence Lewis played a lot. So.
Yeah, Clarence Lewis played more.
If they hadn't reseated you in the press box, you would have been nearest, and you would have heard us say it.
Yeah, I just completely missed out on the north side of the stadium.
Yeah, I would say, but man, it was so hard it was in my tail of the tape today, Pete, that I think I can speak for the rest of the media that we don't want green jerseys with blue numbers. No. We don't want to see them. I don't care how much it.
Amazing how easy they are to read on the TV copy.
I know, but we are on the 9th floor, and you can, I have watched entire games through binoculars, but it's a rough way to go about watching the game.
Yeah, I do that often. It was tough this time though. That time when I was like, "Hey man, Bertrand looked fast there." You're like, "Oh, that's Bracey, Tim. He is fast." There's something. No. It was really difficult to see what was going on.
It wasn't quite that difficult, but I would say B plus. I mean, you can't. Yeah, I mean, you got to get some takeaways in order to be higher than that. And I think they played well enough where, I mean, as you mentioned, Pete, 21 points against Ohio State, or was it you, Tim? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, they played well enough. And again, I go back to, I think a lot of throws that aren't made are because the coverage is very, very good. I think they've done a good job. I mean, I think Bracey's been really, really good.
Yes.
DJ Brown was really, really good Saturday. Like Hart was probably the one that blew the coverage on the first touchdown. But he's very influential on the field. Clarence Lewis played really well on Saturday. I don't know that Brandon Joseph has played to the playmaking level that I expected. Ramon Henderson did some really good things Saturday after not doing some very good things previously.
A little bit of ground to make up there, but he did. He's that dime linebacker spot is a good one for him, I think.
Yeah, he rushed the passer well, made a tremendous pass breakup on Kell's last drive when they got down to the 21. He did some good things. So I think, that secondary is really trending. I think Benjamin Morrison has a chance to be a star. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that long term that he has a chance to be a star.
Yeah, I do. I totally agree with you. I think Clarence Lewis, well, Bracey had the best game because all three of the games have been the best, I think. And I think Clarence Lewis was the next game, though, in his non-starting role. He had 38 snaps, it looks like, and Morrison 26. So Morrison must have had a really good week of practice, and maybe Lewis did not have such a great week of practice. But credit to Lewis that he responded.
Morrison is just, he's
going to be better. He's going to be better. I don't think we're fighting that.
Even the 33-yarder, he was beaten off the line of scrimmage. And he narrowed the gap, and he's got to you got to throw a hand up or something at some point. You don't turn around, but you got to throw a hand up to break up the pass, and the pass was perfect. But no, I think they're doing a pretty good job.
Final question from Thunder 2002. What do you believe Notre Dame needs to do to win versus North Carolina?
I want to throw out a stat that I included in my column on Sunday, and that is this: that North Carolina, and albeit against lesser competition, North Carolina is averaging 51.3 points per game. Notre Dame has scored 55 points in 3 games. So they have barely scored more than what North Carolina is averaging. So got to play better defense. You're going to have to score a lot more points than you have been in the first 3 games.
Avoid a Drew Pine first half. Like if Drew Pine could do his second half twice against North Carolina, which assumes the offensive line allows that kind of play calling to be effective, then I think Notre Dame will be fine. But we've seen that one time for one half. So I think just sort of assuming it's going to happen is a bit wishful. It's not that they can't do it, but you got to go out there and prove that you can more than once.
Yep. 2 repeats would be the defensive line and the offensive line from the second half. And I think they'll beat North Carolina and I believe it was Pick'em when the day started. On the
Are you surprised at that line, Tim?
Yeah, I thought Carolina would be a slight favorite.
Yeah.
Did it go back to Pick'em? Because like it opened at Pick'em and then Notre Dame was suddenly favored by 2.
At like 11 o'clock, that's the first time I saw it. It was Pick'em, but I don't know what that
you guys
changed into recently.
And not everybody's lines are the same. Are you? I don't know if you guys are looking at the same lines or the same outlet that's putting the lines out. Yeah, they got to win both lines of scrimmage again, and that goes back to what Marcus Freeman has said probably at least 10 times to us since August, that it's an O-line, D-line driven program, at least at this stage of his head coaching career, until they can flip the switch with skill position athletes on offense. Yeah, it better be O-line, D-line. Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame, I think they can win both again. I don't know if they can do it quite as decisively as they did against Cal, but it definitely starts there. And then, matchups, Bracey has to be great on Josh Downs. Sounds like Josh Downs will be back in play. Leofau, remember what a significant impact he had on the game in 2020 at North Carolina with the slant game, which I have more to watch of North Carolina, but having seen them, yeah, they're definitely still throwing slants because it works well, especially when you have Josh Downs. So they got to be really good. They're going to have to be better than North Carolina in the trenches.
You're saying they're going to throw more slants than Notre Dame?
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine so. Yeah. All right, we're going to be back on Thursday, September 22nd, to get in more thoroughly with Notre Dame versus North Carolina. I just want to throw this out as a reminder, with an off week coming up and then a trip to Vegas coming up. We will be podcasting on Monday and Wednesday of the next 2 weeks because I get a grandbaby to see next week, and the following week.
Some money to win for that granddaughter, right?
Yeah, right. And then the following week, we're going out a little bit earlier than normal to Vegas. So we will have podcasts Monday and Wednesday of the next 2 weeks. We appreciate you joining us again for Irish Illustrated Insider. Until Thursday, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley, Pete Sampson, Irish Illustrated Insider.